Life after Microsoft Windows. Cutting the cord. I lost everything. How can I prevent you from doing the exact same stupidity that I did? I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much once again joining me for tea time. Today we have a little bit of fireside. That smokiness, so good. So good. I hope you're joining me with your cup of tea, maybe a cup of coffee, hanging out, talking tech, talking photo, talking video. Today is a technology day. We're going to be talking about my mistake, my big mistake. I basically lost my entire operating system. This is in addition to the Life After Microsoft Windows series. And I'm taking you on this journey where I'm breaking free of Billy the Kid, Microsoft, and his tyrannical ways. His software that I would call more malware or spyware than actually an operating system. That's my personal opinion. So I was trying to break away from them. Years ago, I broke away from Adobe. I did the entire Life After Adobe Cutting the Cord series. That went over really well about 5 years ago, and I've never used Adobe since. And a lot of you guys that have been with me for this time probably have done the exact same thing. Now we're moving into Windows because from going from Windows 10 to Windows 11, it's not really a great thing because there's going to be a lot of telemetry there. There's a lot of spying going on. There are things that you really don't want occurring on your system. Number one, you have recall. Now you could turn it on and off, but originally it was set to be on automatically. And what it would do is it would take a snapshot of your screen every 2 to 3 seconds. 2 to 3 seconds. That means everything that you did is captured. And then it boils it all down using your processing power. Thank you, Billy the Kid. Love that, Microsoft. Using your processing power and then sends it off to them for inspection. Like, what are they doing with this data? I really don't know, but either which way, it is an infringement of my privacy, and that's why I'm trying to get rid of them completely. Now, just so you guys know, I still have my Microsoft here. It has not been back in the computer for about 70 plus days now. Okay, over 2 months, I have not used Windows. I'm only using Linux. Okay, I've tried about 7 or 8 different distros or distributions. Right now, we're using Linux Mint 22, but I ended up blowing it up. And that's what this video is all about. Before I get deep into it, I just want to say that if you enjoy the video, throw it a thumbs up. That's very helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not. If you are, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Click this little notification button over here so when I go live when a new video comes out, you'll be notified of it immediately. If you want to say thank you for all of my hard work on this channel, there's a little thank you button that YouTube gave us. Thank you, YouTube. Click on that, give $1 or $2 if you like. If not, that's perfectly fine. Consider becoming a member of the channel. That would be even better. And if you want more content like this, Life After Microsoft Windows, Cutting the Cord, I'll put a link right here. Don't click on it yet. Click that link when you're done watching this video and you'll see a whole bunch of other videos about what is going on here. And the main thing here is I am very upfront, all right? I'm gonna tell you where things are bad and where things are good, where there's stumbling points, and today is a stumbling point. Finally, if you haven't downloaded any of my ebooks yet, check them out. They are free just for you being here. Go to JCristina.com/books. So what ended up happening? Short story. I ended up upgrading my GPU. I went from an NVIDIA GPU, which was a 4060 Ti, to a AMD GPU, which is the RX 7800. Well, I was stupid. And I didn't uninstall the drivers for the NVIDIA card before installing the AMD GPU. And the OS took a hit, and that was it. Now, I tried all different types of things to try to get it corrected and fix it and all the rest, and there just really was no repairing it. Bear in mind, NVIDIA has proprietary drivers that you have to install for it to work in Linux, whereas AMD cards don't. The actual drivers are built in to the kernel. So you would think that no problem, once we uninstall an NVIDIA card and install the AMD, Linux will be like, hey, it's an AMD. Let's go ahead and use the drivers that we already have in the kernel. Yeah, well, I went a little deeper and I installed proprietary drivers for it, which were the Pro drivers, and just blew the whole thing up. And once again, it was not repairable. So I had to reinstall the operating system. This took hours, and the reason being is I tried different distros. But the bottom line is I was out many hours just because of my stupidity. Now, what could have been done differently? Well, number one, we could have used time shift. Now, if you guys are Mac users out there or you know about Mac, there's something called Time Machine. Time Machine will back up your system incrementally, continuously. So if you lose a file or something is blown up, like I did, you can go backwards in time, hence the name Time Machine, go back in time to a day where everything was fine. All right, which is really cool. Well, that's exactly what Time Shift does. Time Shift is basically Time Machine, but on Linux. A little bit different. It focuses more on the OS, on the operating system, and your hidden files and things like that in comparison to all of your files. Now, can you use it to back up all of your files? Yes, that gets a little bit more into the configuration of it, but yeah, you can do it, but it's not meant for that. There are other backup options out there for backing up your user data compared to the operating system. Time Shift, let's just call it an operating system backup. So if I would have had Time Shift installed at the time, I would have just been able to go back one day in time, and now everything would have been copacetic, and I wouldn't have lost hours and hours and hours and hours of fixing the damn thing. All right, so I want to show this to you. I want to show you how to install it and talk to you a little bit about it. So if you have Linux and you're going on this journey with me, you can install this yourself and now keep backups of everything that you're doing. All right, so let me change over to my other monitor. Now let me start out by showing you what my system is consisting of as of today. So if we type in neo fetched, this is what the system is. We're running Linux Mint 22. You can see that kernel is 6.8.0-47. That is brand new. It was just installed an hour or so ago. How many packages are installed, the shell, resolution. You can see I have two monitors there. And you can see the desktop that I'm using is Cinnamon 6.2.9, and the CPU is an AMD Ryzen 7. It's a 38X, which is overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz. And I'm currently using the NVIDIA GPU, GeForce RTX 4060 Ti. This is a 16 gigabyte unit, and we're running with 32 gigs of RAM. Now, let me type in clear. You could type sudo apt update. And what this will do is it'll update your entire system. All right, so everything now is updated. Then we could type in sudo apt install time shift, like that. Now, I have it installed already, so I'm not going to do that, but that's what you can do if you want to install it. Very, very simple. Now, let's go ahead and do it a little bit differently. This is the geek method of installing time shift. Let's move this out of the way. And what we'll do is just simply open our software manager. There you go. And that's all we have to do is type time shift. At the top, it's going to look in the repositories, and sure enough, there is time shift. It has a check mark. That means that I have already installed this package. So let me go ahead and run time shift. This is what it looks like. It comes up, says, hey, wait a second, we need some additional permissions here. So I'm going to type in the system admin password, hit enter, and here is the software. Very simplistic, but as you can see, there is 5 backups already done. One from October 12th, 13th, 2 on the 14th, 1 on the 15th, and there was not one today done as of yet. I'll go through all of these in just a second, but before we dive into that, let me just explain to you how it works. When you install it, it's going to ask you, do you want to use rsync or do you want to use BTRFS? Now, BTRFS is letter B tree file system. And rsync is basically remote sync. And rsync has been around forever, whereas BTRFS is a new kid on the block. But what makes it really good, it allows you to do these incremental or snapshot backups of your system. Very low level, down to the file system. So it does it quickly, and it is very, very efficient at what it does. Now, the only way you can use that, you have a BTRFS file system. You would have had to have done that at the time of installation of Linux Mint or any Linux that you're using. For me, it's Linux Mint. I did not. I used ext4. And for me, I like that because it's been around forever. It's very solid. And I really don't need that little bit of niceties that you get with BTRFS. So for me, I have BTRFS grayed out. I didn't have an option to use it. But if you have a BTRFS system, it's going to give you both options, either using rsync or BTRFS. The next thing it asks you is, where in the heck do you want to put the backups? Well, always put your backups on an external hard drive or a secondary hard drive inside the computer, or even on a NAS or somewhere, not on the exact same drive. Because if that drive goes south, well, you have nothing, no backup and no actual operating system either. So put it on a secondary drive. It's going to ask you where to put it. I put it on a secondary 2 terabyte NVMe built into the computer, so it was very easy for me to do that. You could also do, once again, external hard drives. Anything that is mounted, you can save to. The next thing it's going to ask you is scheduling. When do you want things backed up, and how many backups do you want me to save? So there is multiple options. You can do it monthly, a monthly backup. You can do weekly, you could do daily, you could even do hourly. And then they have an option that says boot. Now, obviously, you know what monthly and weekly and daily and hourly is, but boot is kind of interesting because what it does is it takes a snapshot of your computer, of your OS, of your operating system every time you boot the computer. So if you boot in and now there's a problem, you can be like, hey, wait a second, that's okay, no problem. Let's go back to yesterday's boot because it was fine yesterday, right? So you can set that up also, however you want to do it. The way I set it up was daily, and I kept 5 backups. What that means is I have a week's worth of backups at any given time. For me, 5 is enough because I'm on the computer all the damn time anyways. If something goes sideways, I know about it, and I'll be able to go back once again the day before. Also, what's very important is if you're going to do a major upgrade or update to the OS, to the operating system, to a driver or something, do a manual backup. It allows you to do that. You just simply hit backup. It does a manual override. It does a backup for that specific moment. And then you do your update of your driver or whatever else. I should have took my own advice, right? I wouldn't have blown the thing up. Now, the next thing it's going to ask you is what to include and what to exclude. Now, it automatically includes the entire operating system, so that is not a problem. But you could include other things. For me, I include all hidden files. So any of the .dot files that are in your home directory and your root directory, like .config and all the rest of them, I back those up also because there's a lot of important information in there. So if my OS blows up, I can go in there and use that configuration on a reinstall of the OS. I shouldn't need it, but I still do it just as a backup, just for some peace of mind. Now, at this point, you can also use the software to back up your documents or back up your games or back up your photos or whatever else. But in my personal opinion, use TimeShift only for your backup of your OS. There are better options out there that really dig in a little bit more detailed that are better for doing a backup of your user data. And I'll get into that in a future video. So let's jump back over to my screen real quick. Now you can see these are my 5 backups. Once again, October 12th, 13th, twice on the 14th, and one for the 15th. And there was not a backup done as of today. We could click on restore and it's going to ask you to select a snapshot to restore. We're not going to do that. We can hit delete and it's going to delete one. We could also do browse, and then what it will do is it'll bring up a browser so you can see what is currently on the drive. Here's your snapshots, and you can look at the rest of your file system, but be careful. You see it says elevated privileges. That means you could do some stuff that you really don't want to do because remember, we sudoed into this, right? We provided our administrative password, so it has a lot of control over what is going on. Let's exit out of this. Then we can go into settings, all right? This is where we can manually set things up. Like we said before, we have rsync or we have BTRFS. This is grayed out because I do not have a BTRF system. I have an ext4. Now we can go to location. You can see that it's backing up over here to this NVMe 1, not the NVMe 0, because NVMe 0 is my operating system. NVMe 1 or this Western Digital Black, this one is where I'm putting my games and also my backups. And it is 2 terabytes, so there's plenty of space there. Now we can go over to scheduling, and here you can see I set this up for daily, and there is 5 backups. Now we can go to users. Now this is where we set up what we want backed up. I have include only hidden files. Now when it says only hidden files, that is only in addition to all of the system files. So I'm adding the dot files also. We can go into filters. This just gives you the exact same thing that we've already said. We can see the plus here, which is our root directory of all dot files. Then we can see a negative here, which it won't do, which will be all other files in our root directory. So it's only going to get the dot files, and it is going to get the JCristina home dot files. So root and JCristina home dot files, which are those hidden files. We can go into miscellaneous, and then here is how we want it saved. What do we want it to look like, the files? This top one is good enough for me. This means that it's going to go year and then month and then day and then the time. However you want to set it up, it's completely up to you. So very simple, right? It's the same thing as when you installed it originally. You can go and make changes after the fact just by going into the program. Now, the question you're going to have is, how do I restore it? If things go south, what do I do? Well, there's a couple of ways of restoring, and it really depends on how bad the problem is. For me, I couldn't even boot in. It was just horrific. Okay, it was really bad. Now, for me, I would have to go and boot onto a Linux, the same Linux OS or distro, boot into the live mode of this. Once I'm in there, I would install TimeShift, because obviously TimeShift is not sitting on here. I would install TimeShift, and then I would do a restore, but also telling it where the restore backups are, because once again, it's going to be on your external hard drive or whatever. You're going to have to configure it so it can find your backups. Once you select the backup, you click on restore, it does the restoration, you take this out, you reboot, and there you go. You're great. No problem. The other way to do it is by booting into compatibility mode. Now, to boot into compatibility mode is pretty easy. That's all you're going to do is hold down shift while you're booting, and then going to advanced options for Linux Mint and tell it, listen, I want to go into recovery mode. Once you're in there, remember, this is recovery mode. You then have to mount the drive, your primary drive, your root drive, and then you need to mount that secondary drive that has your backup, and then do the installation just like you did before. You could do it this way, but it is definitely a little bit more difficult because you need to go into your terminal window and mount those drives. Now, is that a big deal? Not really, but once again, it is a little bit harder than just simply booting onto here. Now, if you didn't do something catastrophic like I did, you can most likely just go into the software itself and then go backwards in time and restore. So maybe you had an update that went through and it screwed something up and something's not working properly. You're like, okay, wait a second. Let's just go back to yesterday's backup. As we know, yesterday it was fine. Right now it's not working. So this is a really great utility, TimeShift. It's very similar to Time Machine, but Time Machine gives you the added benefit of being able to more granularly go into backing up certain files and then restoring certain files, where this is more, let's say, a wide or a large paintbrush, right? It doesn't get in there for the details. Once again, I will do another video when it comes to backing up your user files. There are about 4 or 5 really good options for backing up those user files, and I'll pick 1 or 2 and then I'll show you what they look like so that you can do a complete backup, a backup of your OS and a backup of your files. It just simply makes sense. Now, bear in mind, I was telling you that you can do an hourly backup, and if you're a programmer, for example, and you screwed something up, you would be able to go back in time. Yes, that is the case, but remember, you have to set it up to back up that directory also. If not, TimeShift is only going to back up your system, only your OS, and that is it. So when you set up what is included and what is excluded, you want to make sure that you're including the location where those program files, that work that you're doing, is located. So let's say you have a client 111, let's say, you're going to go and say, listen, I want you to back up client 111 so that when every hourly backup happens, that directory is also backed up. So if you make a mistake on your program, you can go back in time 1 hour and not have to worry about it, or 5 hours, or 10 hours, or 30 hours, however you want to set it up. It is very, very powerful. So anyways, guys, I hope you found this helpful. Once again, don't do stupidity like I did and not have a backup and then have to reinstall. You know, I guess I should say I kind of wasn't stupid because I didn't set up the time shift because I wasn't sure if I was going to keep Linux Mint 22 or not, or go with another operating system, another distro, another distribution. So I never installed it. Well, at this point, I figured I might as well install it because I'm working on Linux Mint for weeks now. There's no reason to lose all of this data, all of this time, all of this process, all of this work. Because unlike a lot of other people that test these OSs or these operating systems for you, Linux, I do not do it in a VM. I do not do it in a virtual machine. You see, the majority of the people, that's what they do. I do it on bare metal. That means that it's a little bit more difficult, but it gives me the ability to really test things out, especially when it comes to the GPU and how fast it renders, and of course DaVinci Resolve and all this that really gets down and dirty, and it needs bare metal to really test it properly. So that's why I've been using bare metal when I do all of my tests. It's a little bit more difficult than just installing a VM and then deleting it when you're done, but I'm trying to do it so that I give you the best experience when you're watching these videos, so you know exactly what's happening. And once again, it's not sitting in a VM somewhere, a virtual machine. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, throw it a thumbs up. Like I said before, that is very, very helpful. Subscribe if you're not. If you are, I appreciate that. And finally, head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find all the photography tools and my merch and my tools and my tees and my shirts and my books and everything else. If there's something there that tickles your fancy, pick it up. Help support me and my family. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, stay Windows free. And we'll see you in the next one. Love you all.